So once again, this is The Way to a Wonderful Life. I want to open our program today with some information about the great Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. Today we celebrate and observe Dr. King's life achievements and the wisdom that he shared with everyone. And I shared a message yesterday that Dr. King and the Reverend W.J. Powell, Dr. King was the president and Reverend Powell was the secretary of the Montgomery Improvement Association, and this was an integrated bus suggestion for people who were going to ride the buses for the first time in Montgomery, Alabama, where they could sit in any seat that they wanted to sit in, no matter what race or creed or color they were. And this was a great moment in history. And they had these suggestions that would help people to stay in a nonviolent consciousness. And one of the first suggestions was, not all white people are opposed to integrated buses, except goodwill on the part of many. That's a wonderful thing to think about. And then the whole bus is now for the use of all people. Take a vacant seat. Now, this was very, very new, and it was a great change in the shift in the consciousness of the world. And not only did this happen and this affect the people in Montgomery, Alabama, but it affected people all over the United States and all over the world. Said in all things observe ordinary rules of courtesy and good behavior. Remember that this is not a victory for Negroes alone, but for all Montgomery and the South. Do not boast, do not brag. Be quiet but friendly, proud but not arrogant, joyous but not boisterous. Be loving enough to absorb evil and understanding enough to turn an enemy into a friend. And then he gave the people some specific suggestions. He said, do not deliberately sit by a white person unless there is no other seat. That seems shameful now when we think about it, but in 1956, the country was in a whole different consciousness. And sitting down by a person, white or colored, say, may I, or pardon me, as you said. This is a common courtesy. If cursed, do not curse back. If pushed, do not push back. If struck, do not strike back, but evidence love and goodwill at all times. For the first few days, try to get on the bus with a friend in whose nonviolence you have confidence. You can uphold one another by a glance or a prayer. If another person is being molested, do not arise to go to his defense, but this is so important, but pray for the oppressor and use moral and spiritual force to carry on the struggle for justice, That was wonderful, wonderful wisdom and wonderful, wonderful spiritual recognition of the power of God's love and God's inclusiveness with all of us that Dr. King and the Reverend Powell illustrated in those suggestions. So once again, whatever you do today, whatever it is that you find within your own experience personally to celebrate the life of Dr. Martin Luther King, if there's no activities going on in the area in which you live to serve others or to observe the celebration, just go on the internet if you can, or just go and find a book if you can, and read about his life and read the wisdom that he shared with all those around him. And each and every one of us can realize that as we go through that shift in consciousness towards that principle that Jesus gave us. Jesus gave us a principle. He didn't give us a suggestion. He said, love one another. Love one another, and everybody's life will be better, including your own. Love one another. Doesn't mean you have to approve, but it does mean we have to love them, knowing that they are the living Spirit of God, doing whatever they're doing, but that thing that they're doing or that thing that they may be realizing for themselves is momentary. Not everybody realizes that they're the living Spirit of God expressing God's livingness, givingness, and forgivingness in this thing called life. So once again, I want to thank you for being with me today. This is The Way to a Wonderful Life, and I am Reverend Dr. Henry Lee Bates, coming to you live from Palm Springs, California. And last Friday, we began to look at the work of the great Christian D Larson in his essay, The Ideal Made Real, The Ideal Made Real. And we're going to continue with part 2 today. And he said, if the proper beginning is made, the subsequent results will not only be greater and be realized in less time, but much useless experience and delay will be avoided. These principles or prime essentials are as follows. He gives us seven of these principles, these prime essentials, so that we can reach our ideals and realize an experience of achievement and develop greater ability, capacity, and power to improve not only our lives, but the lives of those around us. And the first thing he tells us is, number one, is learn to be still. And we know from the scriptures, be still and know that I am God. Be still. Be still your mind. Still your mind and trust in God. Still your mind and let God bring forth to you that greater idea for yourself, that greater strength and conviction that God's good. God's good comes to you with grace and ease. Number two is rejoice and be glad. He says cheerfulness is not only a good medicine, but it is food for the mind and body. The cheerful life will fill every atom with new life, and it is to the faculties of the mind what sunshine is to the flowers and the trees. So as we think about that and as we have that habit to be cheerful, then wonderful things will begin to come into our life. And it won't be there'll be less struggle in our life, less friction in our life. Let your heart and your soul sing at all times, he tells us. When you do not feel the joyous music within, produce it with your own imagination, and before long it will come of itself with greater and greater abundance. Your soul will want to sing because it feels the music, and there are few joys that equal the joy that comes when the music is felt in the soul. And then his number three out of his seven prime essential principles is love everybody and be kind. Love everybody and be kind. Now we look at those words of the great Dr. Martin Luther King from those suggestions for the integrated bus suggestions, and you realize he too believed this. Love everybody and be kind. If you wish your path to be strewn with roses, just be kind. Give your best to the world, and the best will come to you without fail. If it does not come today, never mind. Just go on being kind and refuse to consider disappointments. Never hold in mind those things that you do not wish to retain. You thus cause those things to pass away. This shall also pass away is true of everything that is not pleasant. But unpleasant things will not pass away so long as we hold them in thought. That which you let go from your mind will pass away from you entirely. So train yourself to be kindness in a permanent state of mind. Train yourself to love everybody, because you cannot afford to criticize, condemn, or be angry at any time. We know that anger not only disturbs the mind, but also destroys the cells of the body. And no one can be angry without losing a great deal of life and energy. To find fault never pays. It simply brings discord and criticisms. Besides, the faults we constantly see in others, believe it or not, will develop in ourselves. The critical mind is destructive, and the critical attitude is weakening to the entire system, body, mind, and soul. Therefore, no one can be his best who permits himself to think or talk about the flaws of life. Be good and kind to everybody. It is one of the royal paths to happiness and peace. And we just know that's the truth. And number four was have faith in abundance. Have faith in abundance. We can call on God, and God responds to us, so let's have faith in that abundant good that God has prepared for all of us. Have faith in God. Have faith in man. Have faith in yourself. Have faith in faith. Believe in everything, and you relate yourself to the best that is in everything. Relate yourself to the best that is in everything. We all know the value of self-confidence, but faith is infinitely deeper, larger, and higher. Self-confidence helps us to believe in ourselves as we are at present, and thus helps us to make a better use of the talents we now possess. But faith elevates the mind into the consciousness of our larger and superior possibilities, and thus increases perpetually the power, the capacity, and the efficiency of the talents we now possess. Faith brings out the best that is within us and puts that best to work now, that best to work now. He who follows faith, remember Jesus' entire ministry was about calling us and instructing us to realize that faith is a power within us, that through faith we can do all things, greater things still, he said, than we've ever done before, greater things still than we've ever done before. So expect the best and know that the best is coming to you at all times. So number 5, this is beginning today's message. Pray without ceasing. Pray without ceasing. Once again, this is a reminder. This is coming from the Ideal Made Real by Christian D Larson. That's where we're taking the basis of this lesson this morning. And he's given us 7 principles or prime essentials that we're to follow if we want to make our ideal real. So number 5 is pray without ceasing. The true prayer is the whole-souled desire for the larger, the higher, and the better, while the mind is stayed upon the Most High, and to pray without ceasing is to constantly live in that lofty desire. The forces of mind and body always follow our desires. Therefore, if we would use our powers in building up a larger life, we must have high desires and true desires. Turn your desires upward and keep them there. Desire the greater things only. Never desire anything less. Those powers within you will cause you to become as true, as great, and as perfect as your heart has prayed that you might become. To cause our desires, thoughts, and states of consciousness to rise to the very highest states of being, we should employ the silence daily. That is, we should enter into the absolute stillness of the secret life of the soul. Through the silence, we shall find the secret of secrets, the path to that inner world from which everything proceeds. To begin to be alone and comfortably seated, or you may enter the silence in association with someone that is in perfect harmony with yourself. Relax your mind and body, close your eyes, and be perfectly quiet. Turn your attention upon the inner life of the soul and gently hold your mind upon the thoughts of stillness and peace. Affirm with deep, quiet feeling, peace is mine. I am resting in the stillness of the spirit. I have entered the beautiful calm. I am one with the infinite. I am in the garden of the great within. I am in the secret places of the Most High. And so it is. Amen. Just let your mind get into that and let it be that good that you want to have. And take everything to the Lord in prayer. Everything. Take everything to the Lord in prayer. Everything that is important should be taken into the silence, and through the silence to the infinite. This corresponds perfectly with what Jesus was teaching. Take the Lord into your prayer. The real purpose of the silence is to enable the mind to enter the inner life and not only recreate all thought according to the higher truth, but to enter into a more perfect touch with the divine source of all things. The silence should be entered every day. And he tells us for 10, 20, or 30 minutes. This is a daily practice of extreme value, When a person can live in these higher realms always and constantly and desire the realization of the highest and the best that he knows, the prayer without ceasing is the prayer without ceasing. The true spiritual prayer is being fulfilled. Such a prayer will be answered eternally. Every day will bring us something that we have truly wished for, and every moment will be supplied with all that is necessary to make the present full and complete. So number 6 of his prime essentials or principles, spiritual principles, is think the truth. When we learn to think the truth, we have actually come to the parting of the ways. Here we find where the old leaves off and the new begins. In this state, the wrong disappears and the right is discerned and realized in an ever-increasing manner. The foundation of all truth is expressed in the basic statement that mankind, man and woman, is a spiritual being created in the image and likeness of God. And being created in the image of God, mankind is now divine and in possession of all the divine attributes. Each individual is now in possession of wisdom and power and love and life, perfect peace, joy, universal truth, universal freedom, universal good, divine wholeness, and boundless supply. True, these attributes exist principally in the potential state. That is, they are possibilities waiting within everyone for unfoldment, development, and expression. Nevertheless, they do exist in every soul, your soul, my soul, every soul, and to a degree that is limitless. Therefore, every soul does actually possess these attributes. And to speak the truth, we must recognize their existence and even now claim their possession. To think the truth, you must think that you are divine in your true being and that you possess these attributes because this is the truth. You are divine in your true being because you are created in the image of God, and you do possess the divine attributes just mentioned because that which is divine must necessarily possess the attributes of the divine. To think contrary to this would be wrong thought, and from wrong thought comes all the wrong in the world. The average person does think contrary to this thought. Therefore, he or she is almost constantly in bondage to self-inflicted nonsense, sickness, or trouble of some kind. Divine wholeness, that is perfect health of body and mind, can be ours now, always can be, and always will be. Therefore, it would be wrong for us to say, I am sick. Our real being is never sick, never will be, because it is divine, and we are the real being. We are not the body. We possess a body, and that body may be indisposed. If you create wrong thought, but that body is not you. You are a spiritual being created in the image of God, therefore you are always well. When sickness appears on the surface, that is in the body, know that it is on the surface only. That sickness is not in you. You are real being, and in real being, perfect health reigns absolutely and eternally, just as Jesus told us. The sickness that sometimes appears in the body is the result of a recognition of untruth, either expressed in wrong thinking or wrong living. Right thought, that is, that thought that invariably follows the recognition of absolute truth, would not produce sickness, and no person could become sick that is always filled and protected with the power of right thought. When the light reigns supremely, darkness cannot enter. Wrong thought comes from a false conception of ourselves, and false conceptions will continue to form in our mind so long as we accept these false ideas of the truth. We've learned these things from day one that we entered on the life on this planet, but we must unlearn them if we are to live in that divine state and realize that abundant life that Jesus tells us is ours to live. When you know the truth that you are the image of God, perfect in your own true being, you will think this truth, and all your thought will consequently bring forth right conditions that can exist in your life all the time. When you see yourself as you are in your true being, that you are even now strong and well, in full possession of peace and love and power, wisdom, freedom, and all the good that is in God, you will think of yourself accordingly, and such thought is right thought. The result will be right conditions in mind and body. From center to circumference, your entire being will be well and perfect, as it always was and ever will be in the truth. To think the absolute truth at first seems a contradiction of known facts, because we are so used to judging from appearances. But when we find that appearances are simply the result of thought, of wrong thinking, that right thought produces a better appearance, a good appearance, and wrong thought produces adverse appearances, and learn that true being is the image of God, we shall no longer see contradiction in thinking absolute truth. When we think the truth about ourselves, we shall always think the truth about others. We shall therefore not think of them as they appear on the surface, but as they are in the perfection of real spiritual being. We shall overlook, forgive, and forget the wrong appearance, knowing that it is but a temporary effect of wrong thought, and we shall proceed to inspire everyone to change that appearance by thinking right thoughts, the right of truth. And finally, number 7, the seventh principle that Christian D Larson wants us to understand and know, and he says these are 7 prime essentials. He tells us to live in the Spirit. live in the Spirit. To express the statement in its simplest form or terms, we would say that to live in the Spirit is to live in the upper story of mind and thought, or to live on the good side, the bright side, and the true side of everything. To the beginner, this is sufficient because this simple change in living must come before the higher spiritual consciousness can be realized. But the change, though simple at first, will completely revolutionize your life. Before long, however, the consciousness of the true side and the better side will become so clear that to live in the Spirit will mean infinitely more than to simply dwell in the upper story of mind. And when this larger experience comes, we shall know from our own illumined understanding what it means to live in the Spirit. When we begin to think the truth, and all kinds of illusions and false beliefs will gradually vanish away, and we shall not only understand that we are spiritual beings, but we shall feel that we are all that divine life can be. Just as Jesus said, look up and away. Look up and not down. Look up in your mind and your thoughts, and lift yourself up, and as you be lifted up, all things will be lifted up with you. We will find that the Spirit is the basis of all things, the soul of all things, and therefore all things are in reality very good and very beautiful. We will find through the Spirit, that evil is but a temporary condition produced by man's understanding of the goodness and the completeness of real being, or man's misunderstanding, we might say. From this place we may ascend to other and greater heights, because eye hath not seen nor ear heard, neither hath it entered into the heart of man what God has prepared for them that love them. Let's remember these words. Eye have not seen. In other words, mankind has not seen, nor has heard through his ears, neither hath it entered into the heart of man what God has prepared for them that love him. In other words, even the greatest good that we can imagine for ourselves in our finite human mind, God has prepared something even greater for every one of us, and that includes you and me. So once again, I want to thank you for being with me this morning. This has been my great pleasure.